come on and hear, come on and hear Alexander's Ragtime Band.
In the early years of the century, Britain was still building 50% of the world's merchant ships. Her shipbuilding and railway engineering were unsurpassed throughout the world, and her worldwide possessions made the British Empire, the greatest the world had ever seen, seemingly the empire on which the sun would never set. The most lucrative trading route was that with North America, and the North Atlantic became both the major sea route and the most important for passenger trade. At that time, there were no restrictions on emigrants from Europe entering the New World, and many thousands made the crossing. Britain was in competition, chiefly with Germany, to build the biggest, fastest and most luxurious liners, and so capture both the well-to-do travellers and the bread-and-butter emigrant trade. By 1906, Germany had both the largest liner, the Kaiserin August Victoria, at 24,581 tons, and the fastest liner, the Kaiser Wilhelm II. Britain outshone them both in 1907 with the Cunard liners Lusitania and Mauritania, both at 32,000 tons and speeds of over 26 knots. They were built with subsidies from the Admiralty, who wanted to regain British prestige and prevent Cunard from being taken over by an American combine. The subsidy also meant the two liners could be adapted in time of war as armed merchant cruisers.
London, January 21st, 1911. In the evening, to the London Pavilion, one of our largest music halls. A carved and gilded interior with city gents lolling on velvet amid Cupids and Hercules and packed to the gods. I was particularly taken by a young lady with a silver voice who was from my native Potteries. Quite the rising star. She celebrates this month her first gramophone recording, and the sheet music and shellac discs themselves are on prominent display in the foyer shop. This song is the hit of the day. Liverpool, October 7th, on board. We left the landing stage at 5:40 p.m. and the huge Leviathan anchored in the river to wait for the tide. In the vast lounge above the restaurant, I formed one of a group of men, most of whom had acquired fame and had the slight agreeable self-consciousness that fame gives. I listened, against a background of ever-insistent music, to one of their endless conversations, and the music is an outrageous nuisance. I took a turn outside. In the strong wind, abaft the four funnels of the Lusitania, a star seemed to dance capriciously about the masthead light. It was difficult to believe that it was the masthead and lamp, not the star, which was dancing. From the lofty promenade deck the Atlantic wave is a little enough thing, so far beneath you that you can scarcely even sniff its salty tang. But when the elevator boy had lowered me through 5 floors, and I looked through the thick glass of a porthole, the flying waves, theatrically lit by moonlight now, were very near. Something jumped and hit the porthole, a crashing blow. I drew my face away in alarm. It was the Atlantic wave, caressing. In my cabin everything was still, except a towel gently swaying to and fro, yet the towel was copying the immobility of the star. It alone did not oscillate. 36,000 tons were swaying, but not that towel. A knock on the door. An officer had offered to show me the ship, and here he was. It was a maze, multifarious convenient staircases, 1,500 or so individual berths. He showed me the first-class kitchens, where spits were evolving in front of intense heat, dough was mixed by electricity, potatoes peeled by the same, and a piece of clockwork lifted an egg out of boiling water after it had lain therein the number of seconds prescribed by you. All more interesting to me than the grand saloons, which I now perceive to be naught but a thin crust of artificial gewgaw stuck over the truly thrilling parts of the ship. The most thrilling to me being the bridge. Charts and telegraphs and sounding tubes, 6 alternative steering wheels and an officer's piano. Descending through several stories and aft, I watched the 4 shafts, revolving lazily 184 to the minute, and got myself involved in a dangerous forest of machinery. Then down steel ladders into an enormous cavern, where 190 giant furnaces were fed every 10 minutes. Imagine hell with the addition of electric light, and you have it. No other part of the ship could hold a candle to it. Back in my cabin, I closed my eyes and listened to the faint straining noises of this enormous organism. In 3 days I shall be on that shore. Terrific adventure! The rest of the passengers were merely going to America. Next day in the restaurant, I again tolerated the endless conversations of the self-important against a background of ever-insistent music. And the music is an outrageous nuisance. It's the new hit of 1911 by a Mr. Irving Berlin.
Let me take you to Alexander's grandstand, a brass band. Ain't you coming along? Come on in here, come on in here. Alexander's ragtime band. Come on in here, come on in here. It's the best band in the land. They can play a bugle call like you never heard before. So natural that you want to go to war. That's just the bestest band what am. Oh, honey lamb, come on along, come on along. Let me take you by the hand. Up to the man, the funny man, who's the leader of the band. And if you care to hear the Swanee River played in ragtime, come on in here, come on in here, Alexander's ragtime band.
Then in 2 days we saw it, New York. Thought, whatever this is or not, it is a metropolis and will rank with the best of them. My first excursion was an adventure. 5th Avenue, Times Square, Broadway and its interminability. The skyscrapers that clustered about the lower end of Broadway, their natural home, were impressive but not architecturally. I applaud the unusualness of the skyscraper. The prow-like notion of the Flatiron Building cutting northward is a splendid notion, an inspiring notion. It thrills. But the building itself is adverbially ugly, and no reading of poetry into it will make it otherwise. From the bigness and brashness to the darker east side, to see the notorious Sharkey's Saloon, and a brief look-in to the continuous performance in the nearby Hebraic Theatre. I caught what was, to me, the haunting sound which would counter the animated and bustling nature of my ensuing tour of the great city.
Some of these days, you're gonna be so lonely. You're gonna miss my hugging. You're gonna miss my kissing. You're gonna miss me, honey, when I'm far away. I feel so lonely, just for you only. You know, honey, I'll let you have your way. And when you leave me, I know it will grieve me. You miss your little daddy some of these days.
To Washington. Architecturally, I was taken to the acme of my host's pride, and I thought the noble wings of the Capitol much superior to the central portion. My abiding image of the central area, paved with good encaustic Minton tiles from my native heath, was groups of static, statue-like, respectable visitors with cricked necks, gazing vertically upwards at the vastness of the great dome. The only buildings which totally impressed me were the great American hotels. The calm orderliness of the rooms, the reckless profusion of clean linen, the fundamental principle that a bedroom without a bathroom is not a bedroom, the magic laundry which returns your effects duly ironed in 8 hours, the bells which are answered immediately. I could categorize the civilizing features of the American hotel for pages. When I told the best interviewer in the United States that my secret ambition had always been to be the manager of a grand hotel, I was quite sincere. And whenever I saw the manager of a great American hotel, traversing with preoccupied yet aquiline glance his corridors and public rooms, I envied him acutely. On this my first visit, I covered a trifling extent of ground, a scrap tucked away in the northeast corner of a vast and varied territory which I have yet really to see. This was the first tremendous impact of the United States on a mind receptive and unprejudiced. How many of the most convinced and positive opinions of my first visit would survive the second? There can be no knowledge without emotion. We may be aware of a truth, yet until we feel its force, it is not ours. To the cognition of the brain must be added the experience of the soul. War is a great leveller. The common soldier, the man of wealth in a floating hotel.